Good morning, everyone. Yes, there is a good morning, even though NAR has me reading like crazy. Um, Last Friday, as I said on one of my Instagram, I, I still don't know what reels post stories are. One of them. Last Friday was a Friday. Was a normal Friday until it wasn't anymore. And we got re-hit by the news about NAR losing the lawsuit from the seller side regarding the structures in commissions. So we're going to talk about this today. I want everybody, please chill, be calm. We're going to do what we have to do, and everything is going to be, yeah, different, but we are going to adapt like everything. And as I said before, and before I start my presentation about this, what happened, what's going to happen, and how we are going to address the situation. For me, real estate market is totally driven by supply and demand. Totally. What that means, depending of the market we are, that person is gonna be able to pay the commission. Very easy example. When a developer needs to sell more of its inventory, what is it that a developer does? They increase commissions and they get rid of the inventory. And and remember the crazy market on the pandemic year, where some of the big developers for single family homes were paying 1% commission because people were buying single family homes like crazy and they sold them because that was a seller's market. So real estate market, the biggest industry in the world, is driven by supply and demand. So let's see how we're going to navigate this. Let's see how we're going to do this, and let's adapt to it. Okay. So I have my biggest, more smart, amazing, well-read developer, almost another broker, Oscar. Welcome to the stage. Um, Juli, can you please Oscar the stage? Uh-oh.
Good morning,
There is
guys.
there is something that I can hear behind you, Oscar. Your mic, no?
My microphone.
Yeah, something is not very clear. But anyways, good morning, welcome. Um, let's talk about NIR, NAR. What is it that you think about what's going on first, and then we go to what happened, what's going to happen, and how we're going to address it?
Well, I was listening to this podcast yesterday regarding the same topic, and I just realized that we are navigating the same type of business like before. It's gonna adapt. It's gonna evolve in a different way, of course, but realistically, I shouldn't worry about what's gonna happen because this is a shake up on the market, and if we want to continue on the same field, nothing is going to happen unless you don't know what to do. But that's why we are here. We want to guide you a little bit. We want to tell you something that you can still do in the real estate market. You don't have to worry so much because what happened with the NAR on Friday. Personally, I don't think That was a good decision. But anyway, uh, whatever happens, we're gonna have to adapt, and it's not that
Exactly.
way.
Totally. Totally agree with you. So let's get into it because there is a lot of things that we need to address today. So um NAR lost a lawsuit from sellers saying that the way that the seller is paying the commission to the buyer's agent is illegal. Let's put it that way. The decision hasn't been hasn't been approved by the judge yet. It's gonna happen. The judge is gonna approve, but there is gonna be comments, and then the DOJ can comment into it as well. So we are waiting for more information to see what's final. But as of right now, as of March 15 of 2024, NAR is gonna pay $418 million over 4 years to these sellers. Guess who's gonna get the biggest chunk of this money? The attorneys, of course. The practice changes will be implemented mid July. We don't know the final practice changes, but as of right now, we're going to explain to you what is it that is going to be implemented. Okay. And the other highlight of the demand is that over 1 million members of the National Association of Realtors has been they have been released from any liability. We are members of NAR, so we have been released of any future lawsuits and copycats on the same topic. Okay, guys, if you have questions while I'm talking, I don't mind if you start writing the questions on the chat. Okay, so we can go and address them. So those are the highlights of the settlement. Okay. This is what we are seeing right now. And this is what the media is talking about in a different way because we humans usually only read headlines. We need to read everything, not only the headlines. The real estate market is not going to disappear. Okay, we are going to change many things. We are going to adapt, but the things are going to be different right now. Okay, that's what happened in the settlement. What's going to happen in practice? Okay, and here, Oscar, let's talk about this. The buyer broker commission as of March 15, so before March 15, was displayed on the MLS. Remember?
Mhm. Yes.
And it was an unilateral offer, meaning if you put 3% on the MLS, you couldn't change it after that because that was a promise. Okay. Now, what's going to happen after March 15? That is the biggest question that everybody has. Okay. I have my presentation here. Da-da-da. Okay, it's right here. Now, in the MLS, this is very important. No offer of buyer broker compensation is going to be on the MLS after mid July. Oscar, do you want to explain that a little more in detail?
Well, actually, the big change on the MLS is what Claudia just said. The commission, the cooperating broker commission, is not going to be displayed on the MLS anymore. So basically, the question that I have heard since Friday is how will I represent a buyer without getting any commission? Should I buy? Should I show properties to this buyer? Should I work with this buyer? And the answer is, of course, yes. It's just the way of how you've been working with the buyers until now.
Yeah,
Um,
let me, I'm sorry to interrupt you right there 1 second. I just want to guide our audience to the part where we were before March 15 and where we are going to be after July 15. Okay. So before March 15 and as of today, the MLS still has the buyer's representation icon where it says 2.5% or 3%. After July 15, that is going to disappear. No more buyer representation is going to be offered on the MLS. Okay. That's
correct.
one of the biggest changes. Now, sellers, as you were saying, Oscar, may offer, listen to these guys, concessions via MLS that could include buyer broker representation. So let's explain this in detail. And I'm gonna bring somebody to our stage, our in-house lawyer, that is Julis Jimenez, and she's gonna help us navigate to this through these questions and answers. Good morning, Julis. Give me just 1 second. We cannot hear you. Something is wrong there. Uh, are you muted? Nope. Juli, can you check on your list to see what's going on until she fixes her mic? Okay. So let's continue with the concessions via MLS that could include buyer broker compensation. Okay. Remember in the past, or so many are used to, when we talk to our sellers, they give concessions towards closing costs. This is something like that. Okay. So in the MLS, seller can offer a concession that could include buyer broker compensation. So in real life, how this is going to work? How is this going to work? It's going to work this way. In the MLS says, seller to give buyer concessions up to 3%. That is going to go towards closing costs. That can go towards buyer's agents representation. But listen to these guys, because it is on the MLS, it has to be on the contract. Otherwise, it's not valid. So if it says on the MLS, seller to give 3% concession, on the contract, it has to say 3% concession towards buyer's representation on the contract. If it is on the MLS and it is not in the contract, it's not valid. It's got to be on the contract starting July 15. That is the biggest change that I've seen right now. You have to spell it out in the contract. And you have to spell it out clearly. We are working on all those documents, okay? So don't worry about that. This talk is about the big structure and highlights of everything. Okay, so Julieta, can you put Julissa on the stage to see if her mic is working now?
Good morning. It should be working now. Yes.
Good morning.
Good
How are you?
morning. Very
Thank you for
good.
being here. Thank you.
You're welcome. Thank you for having me. I was listening
Okay,
to what you were saying. So, yes, I think that's very important to pay attention exactly to what, if any, they're offering, and if not, to negotiate something that is part of the price and is part of the transaction. It has to be clearly marked on the contract how much the buyer realtor is going to receive as compensation.
Exactly. But there is another caveat to it, as per the NAR settlement agreement. And I'm so happy that we have a lawyer here. And Ulysses is our in-house attorney. Okay. She works very closely with us. So something, Oscar, your computer is making a lot of, while you're not talking, can you mute it, please?
All right.
Thank you. Thank you very much. Perfect. Thank you very much. So, there is another caveat to it. So let's recap because this is very important and I want everyone to understand. Okay. Before March 15, buyer broker's representation was stated on the MLS. After July 15, let's see how they're going to implement it. The judge hasn't accepted the settlement yet, and the DOJ hasn't comment on it yet. Am I correct, Julius?
Yes, there's still things that need to be finalized as to how it's going to appear finally.
Okay, perfect. So we're clear on that. Starting on July 15, what we are expecting as per settlement, it says seller can offer compensation on the MLS. We don't know what it's going to be there yet. I'm pretty sure the MLS is working on the little part where it talks about that. But as per settlement, it says seller can offer compensation towards buyer's representative, so towards the buyer's agent. But guys, if it says that on the MLS, but it doesn't say how much and very clear spelled out in the contract, they're not going to pay you. So if it says 3% on the MLS, you have to put seller to compensate buyer's agent 3% from the purchase price at closing. It's going to be that clear in order for you to get paid. But there is another caveat to it. You, real estate agent that is representing the buyer, needs to have a signed representation for that buyer, with that buyer, for that property. If you don't have the signed representation with that buyer for that property, you are not going to get paid either. You have to have that paper as well. It's not like before that we were so happy. Hey, let me open the door for you. You called me and you got into your car and then you went and show houses. And if something happens, the commission is on the MLS. Not anymore. Before you walk into that door, you have to have that paper signed. How is that paper going to look?
Sorry, let me just add up something about what you're saying right now. Only, or in some states, it's mandatory for the realtor to have the buyer sign a representation disclosure. Okay, the things that we in Florida are so used to do the things the way we want to do it, but we're gonna have to accommodate ourselves to do the things that we have to do right now.
Exactly. So we don't know how that buyer's representation is going to look like now. I'm pretty sure it's going to look different than the one we have right now, right, Julius?
Yeah, because if it's going to be specific to the property, because the one right now is actually pretty good because it tells you that whatever property you show them, they're going to buy through you. So that's an extra protection right now that people can start using just to also get used to it and get the buyers used to it. Because I think the biggest shock is going to be to the buyer. They're going to be
Exactly.
like, I don't want to pay that.
Yeah, we're going to talk about the commercial part of selling ourselves to a buyer. And that's the biggest shock, as Julie said, because we're not used to it, which at the end many of you are gonna kill me, but I think we need to learn how to sell ourselves better to the buyer. In our marketing department, we prepared in October of last year, October, November, that we started with this hot potato. I remember we did a presentation about the hot potato on the NAR. I remember Juano did it. 100 things that the buyer agent does for a buyer. And we don't know how to charge a buyer. 100 things with a lot of liability, by the way. And we don't know how to charge for it. So we're going to get into it. But I want to continue with the proposed settlement. Okay. So let's recap. Seller has to offer, doesn't have to. Seller could offer a compensation to buyer's agent, because I have many questions here about what happened if the seller doesn't. I'm gonna answer that. Okay. Seller could offer, because many people think that now NAR says that sellers cannot pay. It's not about the seller cannot pay. It's about that the NAR was obligating the seller to disclose the amount of compensation on the MLS. That's what changed. Okay. Now, they don't have to disclose that. They can pay. Commissions were always negotiable, guys. Who said that 6% was mandatory? It wasn't. It's never has been mandatory. I've been doing this for 24 years. 6% it's never been mandatory. It was customary, which is different. And we're not accustomed to charge the buyer. And we will have to get, I am. Many of you know how much I charge the buyer to represent them. Why? Because I am the best. Because I do this. A, B, C, D, because I know the market, because I'm educated, because I read every day, because I am the best in this market, in this marketplace, in this neighborhood. Okay. If you want to be very well represented, you have to pay me. My time is valuable. Period. Okay. So we'll get into it. Now, it could be compensated. It has to be on the contract, and you have to have a buyer's representation signed by the buyer before you get into that door. Before you knock and say, hey, I want to show your house, you got to have that buyer's representation signed. Okay? Up to there, we are fine. That's what the settlement says, and that's what we are expecting to happen on July 15. I don't know if Oscar wants to add something to it or Julis.
No, I'm okay.
Okay, Oscar.
I'm just gonna wait for something later on, but I have my own opinion on that.
So, third caveat to the same transaction. Third, the buyer's agent agreement that you sign with the buyer has to have an amount. We don't know who's going to pay it yet. If the seller is going to pay it or the buyer is going to pay it. It's going to be negotiated before. So, if the buyer's agent agreement says that someone on the universe is going to pay 2.5%, and the seller is offering compensation of 3%, you cannot make 3%. You have to make the money that the buyer's agent agreement says. So, guys, let's be ultra very careful on that buyer's agent's agreement. If we put 5%, we can get paid 3. If we put 2.5%, we cannot get paid 5. Are we clear on that? Julie, something to add to it? That part was very difficult for me to understand.
Yeah,
But it's like that, yeah.
It's going to create, I'm sure it's going to create a lot of issues. So that's why black and white is the best solution to that. Get your agreement with your buyer right away and make sure they agree to whatever properties you're showing them that day. They're all in that list. And it says, regardless of whatever property I'm showing you or who's paying the commission, this is what I'm going to earn in the transaction.
Exactly. Guys, that was very important what Julie just said. It doesn't matter who's going to pay, but the transaction has to pay that I am going to make X amount of money. If we set 3% on that buyer's agreement and we make 2.5%, we can. But if we put 2.5% and somebody wants to pay us 3%, let's say the buyer agreed to pay 1% and the seller agreed to pay 2%. That's 3%, which is totally doable. But if you put on that buyer's pay agreement paper, whatever representation is, 2.5%, you cannot, listen to me, you cannot make more than what the buyer's representation agreement says. And just to recap, if the MLS says that the seller is conceding, because now it's not paying, the concession to the buyer's representative is 3%, and your buyer's representation paper says 2.5%, you can only get paid 2.5%. Okay? We're going to have more talks about this. We're going to have more classes about this. We're going to get together at the office. We're going to have more Zooms about this until everyone gets it clear. As soon as we have the forms from the MLS and NAR, we're going to review all of them with you guys. Okay? So I have a very important question. What's going to happen with the VA and FHA? Nobody knows. Nobody has an answer. No one knows. That's part of what the DOJ has to step into. What's going to happen with the VA? VAs are always 100%. Who's going to pay for it? Nobody has that answer. FHA and Fannie and Freddie, we don't know yet. They're working on it. They just approve and they just settle on something that doesn't make sense for the whole industry. It's got to have a lot of more different structures to it. This industry is not $450 and go and get a license. This industry is way bigger than that. Do we need buyer's agreement for open houses? Yes, we do. You always, from now on, you always have to have a buyer agreement signed before you walk into a door, open house, whatever. Another question that I had yesterday with a developer. Now, developers, remember those big houses that represent developer sales? They have to change. In order to pay us 6%, they also have to change. Do we have to have a buyer's representation signed by the buyer in order to collect the 6% or 7% or 8% that the developer is paying? We don't know yet. We don't know yet. There are many questions that we don't know yet the answers. That's why from now on to July 15, we are in kind of a limbo. We're going to keep working the same way we have been working. And all of you guys that have called me, and my phone is totally fried right now. and asking me, I hate NAR. NAR did a very bad thing with us. I'm going to keep my comments to myself. You guys know that I'm very blunt and talking. Okay. There is one thing we cannot do right now. We cannot. We can, but we shouldn't leave NAR right now. And I'm going to tell you why. We get the forms that we work on from NAR through our MLS. If we leave NAR now, we're not going to have the forms. So, for practice purposes and being able to keep signing contracts and forms, we should be there. So, stop the madness. Everybody's working on it. And my job for you guys is to make it as easy and possible to understand. Why? Because my liability depends on if you guys understand this clearly and in practice you do it right. So everybody's working on it. So let's get back to it. Oscar, you want to add something?
Well, in the legal part, of course, we don't know what's going to happen. Most likely, we're going to have to adapt, as I said before. And there's a lot of things that we can do. But I don't know if you want to talk to that later on or
Yeah.
right now.
Hold on. The last thing before we move into the next one is all of you guys that in your social media platforms, wherever, everything that is out there, are offering services for free, go and delete everything that says free. You cannot do that anymore. That was another part of the settlement. If you are advertising something for free, because remember, we used to say to the buyer, I do this for you for free, because the one that was paying was the seller, quote unquote. If you said that you're advertising something for free and you don't do it for free, you and me are in trouble. Remove everything that it says free everywhere. Social media, presentations, listings presentations. Now we're going to have buyers presentations that we were not used to have. Okay. You have to remove by law everything that says free on your marketing. Okay. Oscar, get into it. I'm looking at my notes here.
Okay. I just want to say something to all of realtors, of course, all of us. First of all, this is like a push away from our comfort zone. We were so used to do things in a different way, and what Claudia just said about being free on something or doing something for free, we are so used to that because actually it is very easy when we represent a buyer because we just go to the MLS and we check what is the commission that I'm gonna get, and that's it. We fill a contract and we wait until the closing date so we can get our commission back, right? So I don't know if you guys proud yourselves of being negotiators, but being a negotiator is involving also the buyer. We should treat the buyer exactly as we treat the seller. When we do a listing
Totally
presentation,
agree with you. Totally agree with you, Oscar. We are always bending over sellers and we don't bend over buyers. Now that is going to change.
exactly. So if we are a negotiator, we're gonna have to try to negotiate between I mean, with the seller and with the buyer in exactly the same way, because we do a lot of promises to the seller. When we do a listing presentation, we gonna post those beautiful advertisements in every single page, in every magazine, everywhere, but we don't do anything for the buyer. So we gonna have to negotiate that, because otherwise the buyer would not see the necessity of having a realtor involved. Okay. So if you want to continue in this business, if you want to survive in this business, of course, we're going to have to adapt. And the only way to adapt is by doing our work as it was supposed to be done, because actually buyers are as important as the sellers. And if we understand that, and if we make the buyers understand that they need a realtor for their transaction, we always will be there. We're not going to lose our business. We're going to have just to adapt to those things that are going to change in the market.
Yeah, totally agree.
Claudia, I don't know if you touched on the processing fee, but the processing fee is another issue that has to be disclosed and has to be on the buyer agreement, because otherwise there will be no processing fee paid by the buyer.
Yeah, we're not used to it. We always have, I mean, the law always said that we had to disclose it, but we, being Miami Vice people, we're not used to it. Okay. But hey, from now on, it's mandatory. It wasn't mandatory. From now on, it's mandatory. It's gonna be part of the showing agreement, and it's always part of the listing agreement. But now it's gonna be part of the buyer's representation agreement. Okay. Let's talk about. I'm gonna answer a couple of questions that I have here, and I want to move into. Everybody's so concerned about Zillow, and everybody's so concerned about buyers going directly to sellers. Okay, we're gonna talk about that. I have a lot of takes into it. So, Maria Olga says, "Do we need a buyer's agreement per property?" We can have a buyer's agreement per property, or you can have a buyer's agreement per person. Doesn't have to be per property. It's gotta be, Maria Olga, you are representing Claudia Serna to buy a house for 6 months or a year. It doesn't have to have the address for the representation until everything goes into a contract. That's the way it is as of today. Let's see if something changes in the settlement. Okay. But as of today, the buyer's representation doesn't have to have an address. It could, but doesn't have to. You can represent me for my life if I don't want to change realtors. I have clients that their kids are realtors and they want to work with me. Why? Because buying a house is one of the biggest investments on everyone's life. If it's an investment or if it's a primary, it's a big decision. They want to be represented by somebody that knows what they're doing. Okay. So, do we need agreements for open houses? Yes. We will need a lot of paper on the car. Yes, you will need a lot of papers on the car, Marianelli. Now, everything is going to be signed. Everything is going to be signed. Can we put it up to? Over, you were asking this when I said the buyer's representation has to have a commission. I don't know the answer if we can put up to. That is something that is going to come out when they give us the new buyer's agreement representation. We don't know yet. If seller doesn't cooperate, you try to get a commission from buyer. Yes. Guys, I charge to my buyers. I've been charging to my buyers for years. For years, you have to know your value. How many years have you been doing this? You're professionals. And I'm going to tell you something super nasty. The more professional you get into this, and the more you know, and the more educated you get into this, you're going to survive. You're gonna survive.
We're gonna have
And I'm gonna
we're gonna have to be very creative, and there is a way around anyway.
okay. And we're gonna start seeing very stupid things in the market, like this one. We're gonna start seeing agents charging flat fees for opening doors. Okay? Be careful. Be careful. I opened the door for $500. A buyer that is going unrepresented into a seller transaction is making the biggest mistake of their life. They don't know how appraisal works. They don't know how inspection works. They don't know how addendums work. They don't know the the time that a contract has on financing contingencies and warranty dates, and how long do you how many days do you have in order to send approval letter without contingencies. Sellers don't know that. And the biggest example that I'm telling you guys the truth is why the forced sale by owners don't work. 90% of the forced sales by owners in the country are sold for less than the market value. Why? Because seller didn't want to get a real estate agent to represent them in order to save the commission. These are the data. This is data. This is not something that I just, this is data. 50%, 50 of the forced sale by owners in the country ended up in litigation. Why? Because they didn't use the right forms. They didn't use the right inspectors. They didn't check the roof. They didn't check the leak. They didn't check the water system. 50% ended up in litigation. Okay? So if that was as simple as that, as not paying commission and being represented as a seller for sale by owners, will be so famous. And they're not. Those transactions are not famous. Those transactions are not a lot of transactions on the real estate market. Okay? No addendums to the contract, then of course there are always addendums to the contract. We don't know what we're dealing here with yet. There will always be addendums to the contract. Okay? The seller compensation is not towards buyer's closing costs anymore. Yes, Marianela. The seller concession could go towards buyer's closing costs and towards buyer's representation. You can divide it. Let's say that the seller is giving 4% concession. 1% can go towards closing costs and 3% can go towards buyer's representation. That is part of the negotiation in the contract. But everything has to be spelled out in the contract. Okay? So we need to write to each listing agent asking if the compensation is for the buyer. No, we don't have to. We don't have to write, we don't have to call, it says 4%, you send your contract. And your contract says 1% for closing costs and 3% for me. And let's see if it gets negotiated. It's part of the negotiation now. Hey, Claudia, long time no see you. Claudia Nafa. If you are an interested party on the buyer side, meaning I'm representing myself, do I still need to have something signed that I can receive? Of course, you have to disclose that you are a buyer agent. That hasn't changed. Okay. Over, it would be a good idea to put together a sample listing agreement and a buyer. Yeah, of course, as soon as we have it. We don't have anything yet. We don't have forms yet from NAR. It hasn't been approved by the judge. Guys, this is the settlement. It hasn't been approved yet. And the DOJ is going to step in. I'm pretty sure, Julius, your comments on it.
Yeah, I mean, definitely, everybody's gonna chip in. The FAR is also gonna have, a meeting. They're gonna talk about it, and they're gonna create a new, I'm sure, FAR bar contract that is gonna include everything. But once everything settles, the water's kind of still running.
Yeah, exactly. Okay, so let's talk about Zillow. Everybody is they're gonna find the properties on Zillow and they're gonna go straight to the seller's agent. Okay. What do you think, Oscar, about that?
Let me tell you something about Zillow. And the reason of Zillow being out there is to grab the attention of potential buyers and sell that information to realtors. So actually, what's going to happen with Zillow selling those leads to whom? If there's no commission for the buyer's agent. So that's what I think about Zillow. Zillow is not the competition for the realtors. Zillow is a platform for selling leads to the realtors. So I don't know exactly what's going to happen with them, but I don't think it's going to be a competition for us. We, as I said before, we're going to have to be creative. Like, for example, Claudia says something very important at the beginning of the presentation. The real estate business does not belong to realtors only. It belongs to lenders, it belongs to appraisers, it belongs to title companies. So let me tell you something. I'm pretty sure every single part of the market is going to have to be creative. So I I strongly suggest to you, don't be afraid of charging your buyer a commission, because there is some other ways that you can save money for your buyer, like for example the seller's contribution or the seller's concession. You can negotiate with your buyer. As I told before, we are negotiators. If I can get you the best deal on the market, giving getting money from the seller for sellers, I mean for your closing cost, why don't you agree to pay me commission?
Correct. Totally agree with you. And just to add to it, do you guys think that seeing something on Zillow means negotiating something on Zillow? Finding a property on Zillow means that the sale is done and the negotiation is done? It's not. It's far from it. Far from it. Okay. At the beginning, this is going to be like, this is so crazy. I'm not going to be able to make more money representing buyers and everything is going to settle down. And guys, we are not living on a, that is not the right word. Hold on. An undeveloped state anymore. Florida has changed so much. Now, whoever is buying something, that something is at least, as per the MLS, $400,000. Okay. And the $400,000 means that we are living with people that has the capacity to pay for something. And on top of that, I can assure you that the banks are working on having programs where the buyer's representation, the 3%, can be added to the mortgage. I can assure you that's going to happen because that is going to move the industry. And just my last thought about this is the following. I have a listing right now, and I'm showing in my listing on the buyer's commission side that I'm paying 3% commission. So I have 10 agents showing my listing during the weekend. Out of the 10 agents with their prospect buyers, I'm pretty sure one could be interested, right? In my listing. After July 15, I have my listing. I don't have a buyer's representation or concession in my listing. And out of the 10 possible buyers, only 2 can pay a buyer representation. So I will show my listing to only 2 people. Correct? That's what's going to happen. What are the possibilities that one of the 2 are going to be interested in my listing instead of one of the 10? Did I explain myself clear? What that means, that my listing at the end is going to sit on the MLS for more time. And you guys know what happened when a listing stays on the MLS for 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 months. We will have to start lowering the price in order to bring more traffic to it. Or the seller will understand that they will have to pay a concession to the buyer representative in order to have more traffic instead of lowering the price. So if I am a listing agent and I have a listing right now, I will make sure I will explain my prospect seller that if I don't offer compensation, the traffic to the listing is going to be significant less. And that at the end is going to lower the price on the property, which is not good for anyone. It's not good for the neighbor. It's not good for the seller. It's not good for anyone. So, Oscar, your 10 cents, or you leave your 10 cents in my comments.
Yeah, actually, that's something that the plaintiff attorneys for the sellers didn't realize in the long term what was going to happen with the sellers. The sellers, of course, are going to
They're
end
going to
up.
be buyers one day.
Exactly. They're going to be buyers. Besides, if they don't pay commission to the cooperating broker, of course, the potential buyers on the property are going to be lower. So, as you said, prices are going to go down and everybody loses. So that's something that probably those sellers that signed that so didn't realize that it's going to happen later on in the long run.
Yeah, I totally agree. It's just like having a 1% listing on the MLS right now. Nobody's going to want to show it, or very little people are going to want to show it. It's going to have the same effect.
It's gonna have the same effect.
The thing is that sellers think, and to an extent they still do, they have the market for themselves, and that they can ask for anything and do everything that they want. And sure, that's going to change. That's going to change. And it's little by little.
Exactly. So we have 2 very nice questions here. Notice, what should we do if a buyer only agrees to sign a buyer representation agreement if their fee is negotiated as a concession from the seller? What's going to happen? You're not going to work for free, are you? Who's going to work for free here? Let me know. Who doesn't go to Publix? Who doesn't eat? Who doesn't have internet? Who's gonna work for free? No one is gonna work for free, especially in brokers. Nobody. We have our value, and we need to start demonstrating our value. I'm sorry if you don't want to pay me. I can't work for free. Period. You can't. You can't work for free. Somebody has to pay my commission, and that has to be stated before I open that door. Okay, Andres, hola Andresito. Andres has a very nice question. Claudia, will you be able to disclose some broker's remarks? It's not gonna be in broker's remarks. I'm gonna tell you guys what it's going to be because I was researching with my people in the MLS. You will be able to disclose some broker's remarks if the listing that seller will contribute X amount for buyer's concession, if seller agreed to it. No, it's gonna be, they're working on it. Let me see my notes here. It's gonna be in another part of the MLS that is gonna be called, is a block that is gonna be the block is gonna be called concessions in the contract. MLS is developing the concession field to be published, and the verbiage should say something like this: seller to credit buyer X amount at closing to satisfy buyer's contractual agreement with buyer's broker. I'm gonna repeat it, okay? It's gonna say something like this. It's not word by word, something like this. Seller to credit buyer, X amount of money at closing to satisfy buyer's contractual agreement with buyer's broker. But it's gonna be a new field on the MLS. And the MLS is working on that new field on their platform. Okay. Guys, before we end, because we are already 1 hour into it, and remember that we're gonna have more conversations about this at the office, here, and Zoom, wherever. It's time, as Oscar said, to start treating buyers as we treat sellers. We always bend backwards for sellers. We need to start bending backwards for buyers. For me, this market is going to be way more interesting because there is going to be a lot of educated people. Guess who's not going to answer the phone anymore? No one. Everyone is going to answer the phone from now on. Okay? So this is going to be more professional. We're going to have more knowledge. The field is going to clean a little from the people that is not educating themselves. Okay? So chill. Have a wine. This is going to be okay. We're going to tackle this. The industry is going to continue going. When the buyer's market is here, the seller is going to bend backwards to pay. When the seller market is here, the other party is going to bend backwards to pay. Somebody's going to pay. Always. Okay? So I thank everyone for being here. You guys know that I'm very good in WhatsApp, better than my phone. So ask me any questions. Our time is very valuable, Winston. I agree with you. I am super expensive. Because I know a lot, because I educate myself, because I read a lot, because I know how to negotiate, because I have I know people in the industry, because I know lawyers, because I know inspectors, because I know appraisals, because I know how to do a CMA, because I know how my market behaves, because I know what the schools are, where the schools are, which one is good, which one is bad. I know the price per square foot. I'm expensive because I am the best. Okay, so let's learn how to charge, to negotiate, that we're good. We're super good. We are always super good for sellers. No, we are also good for buyers. So don't get afraid of this. It's going to be a change, and we're changing and we're adapting. And that's it. If we don't adapt, we die. We have to adapt. Julisse, thank you very much for being here.
You're welcome. Anytime.
Thank you.
Anybody
I'll
who
see you
has
next.
any questions or concerns, please give them my information.
Yeah, we're gonna put your name in and your phone number in our Slack channel. That is where all the agents are. So she's very good. She's actually representing me in another lawsuit. Welcome to my world. Okay, so I'm used to it. So don't be afraid. Don't be afraid. We can walk into anything if we are doing the right thing. If we're not doing the right thing, it's gonna be a problem. But if we are doing the right thing and we have the right mindset to it, we're gonna get through the other side. Oscar, Jaime, I don't know what I would do without you. Okay.
Okay,
And
just
my
last quote, just one
okay,
quote for everyone there. Remember, knowledge is the key to the best negotiation out there.
totally.
Thank you for
My
being
question,
today
my
here.
question to my two guests today, Julisse, if you were super, uh, if you had a superpower, what would it be?
I would say to be able to know before everybody else knows.
Okay, good.
So knowledge, but before people know.
Okay, Oscar, what would your superpower be?
Like the movie, I would like to have a beautiful mind.
Oh, that's a very nice
Remember?
superpower, a beautiful mind. I remember that movie.
Hmm.
Everyone, thank you. Thank you. Thank you all for being here. I'll see you all next Tuesday. We will let you know what the next I'm pretty sure it's gonna be about the same the next Tuesday. Just more information until everyone knows this left and right. Okay. See you all next Tuesday. Remember that my WhatsApp is always open to you guys, and the Slack channel is for everyone. Bye. Have a great day.
Bye. Thank